If there was a person whose career out there that I would really want, who would it be? And you're looking at Lorraine Kelly.
Gabby, so good to see you. May I ask why? Why not, Lorraine? You're amazing.
Gaby Mendes, a presenter, interviewer, and the host of the famous podcast, The Yearbook Show.
With me, if I look back now, I probably should have closed down the business sooner.
What gave you the courage, the confidence, the inspiration to do it?
The way I describe it is I think courage compounds. The same way that if you start investing, I think courage is something that you start to learn how rewarding it is when you take that initial courage and you go, oh, nobody died.
Is there anything that you were like, those were the things that really worked for us that you could share?
So I think the most important thing is kind of go where your audience is going to be. If you are targeting demographic that I was, of course you have to be showing up on those platforms, because I think you have to show up where people are spending the most time, because we are not infinite people. We don't have all the time in the world.
Gabby, welcome to the show. It is lovely to have you here. We were just saying, I think it's been around about a year since I came onto your show, and it was really cool going over to Liverpool with you guys, with you and the team. I want to dive straight in. For those who don't already know, you have become very well known for doing Talk Twenties, and we'll talk in a moment about how that has changed. But for those who don't already know, do you want to just tell people what that brand was? And also, interestingly, what was the reason that you went down that route and set that up?
Mm-hmm. Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's very nice to be invited to come back or to come on your show. I'm super excited for this chat. And yeah, Talk Twenties was a business that I ran for over 4 years, just under 5 years. And essentially, I had been working in the teaching profession for a couple of years once I'd graduated from university. I was in my early 20s. I had no idea what adulting was. I had no idea what to do with my finances. I was like, how do I manage this long-term relationship that I was in? I was really struggling with anxiety. I moved to a different location, so I was trying to make new friends, and basically a mess, like a complete mess. And I was like, I don't think I'm the only person that can be feeling this way. So I started a little blog at the time and just started posting stuff on my personal page about, your 20s and how they're such a challenging time. And I probably did that for about a year to a year and a half whilst I was teaching. And then a concept and an idea came to me where I thought I had a bit of an events experience, and I ended up moving out of teaching and into events. And I came up with a concept where I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if, there was like a freshers fair for after university where you could go and you could listen to people talk about all these things that you should know about adult life, and you could feel less alone because you'll be in company of other people who feel that way. So when COVID started, January 2020, so we're talking about what feels like ages ago right now, half a decade. No, not quite half a decade. 4 years? No, 5 years.
Yeah.
Half a decade since COVID.
It's horrendous. I can't even talk about how quick life's going.
I literally just said that out loud, and I'm like, wow. So half a decade ago, I was planning on doing this event, and then obviously the world shut down. So I was like, well, how can I still have this same mission of wanting to help young people, and it not being an in-person event? And I'd always kind of planned to do a podcast to stimulate excitement for the event. And I thought I'd do about 10 episodes, and it would get people excited for the event. I kind of planned it to be June 2020. And 5 years later, I was still doing the podcast. We did well over 200, probably nearly 300 episodes, I think. I've interviewed so many different people. We had our own studio. We were nominated for 2 British Podcast Awards. We ended up doing that festival in October 2023 at 2 massive warehouses, 500 attendees. And yeah, we've gone, we've reached so many young people in the past 5 years with Talk Twenties. And essentially it achieved more than I ever thought it would have achieved. And it consumed my life for the past 5 years in the best possible way. I have absolutely loved working on it. I will cherish the memories of it so much. But as you mentioned, we decided to wrap things up and bring it to a close at the beginning of this year. So yeah, and I had a team working on it. Towards the end, it was me and my co-founder Georgia who was working on it with me. Again, we equally loved it, but yeah, we're just navigating into a bit of a new beginning.
Okay, so there's a lot of people that will listen to this show that are maybe on the brink of starting a business. And a message that I really want to get out there, especially in a 2025 world more than ever, is the amount of opportunity to turn things that you're passionate about, interested in, into your own business. And I think people might understand that concept, but then having the courage and the confidence to actually do that is something different. So I'm interested for you. You know, you said this basically started with you just saying, I was struggling. I just thought I would blog that. But then that became a business, it became a podcast, it became events with 500 people there. What gave you the courage, the confidence, and also the inspiration to do it?
hmm Um, I've been asked this question a lot actually, where does like the confidence come from? And the way I describe it is I think courage compounds. The same way that if you start investing and you put a pound in and it starts to compound, I think courage is something that you start to learn how rewarding it is when you take that initial courage and you go, oh, nobody died, and that actually went better than I thought it would. I think that's quite a powerful feeling. And so once you kind of get hooked on that, you're like, well, maybe I could be a little bit more brave. And maybe I could be a little bit more brave until it gets as ridiculous as you saying, I'm going to launch a festival in 90 days in two massive warehouses. And, we want 500 people to be there, 50 speakers, brands involved. That's when it gets a bit crazy. But I started off just saying, I'm going to speak to one guest on the podcast, or I'm just going to write a blog post. And it's that courage that just builds and builds and builds and builds. So now I feel like saying, oh, I've got a really big goal that you're probably going to talk about later down in the show. But now I feel like saying something as crazy as what I'm now talking about online um, becomes easy or easier because that courage is compounded. I would never say or plan to do the things that I'm saying I'm doing now because when I first started out, because I just didn't have the courage at that point. It was baby steps.
So I guess that courage and that take it, having the confidence to just keep taking one step at a time, what you talk about there, compounds. What about in terms of strategy and in terms of what to do and what to say yes to? Is there any tips you can give people listening right now if they are, like I say, at the beginning of maybe building some kind of personal brand and wanting to turn that into some kind of business? Is there anything that you were like, those were the things that really worked for us that you could share?
In what capacity? So are you talking about kind of taking those initial steps with starting a business, or are you talking about kind of pushing yourself to kind of put yourself out there a little bit more in terms of, is it definitely the business that we're building?
Let's talk about the business slash the marketing. So for example, you've had a TikTok that's had hundreds of thousands of views on videos and things like that. A lot of people are like, I want to build a social media, I want to get the views, but I just don't know what works. I'm showing up, I'm
Right.
maybe, I'm doing stuff daily, but I'm not getting the results. What are some of the things you can reflect on? Like, that's what helped us.
So in terms of strategy of building, obviously my business was a media business, and that relies massively. If you look at the media landscape right now, it's massively shifting from traditional terrestrial TV and what used to be where we consumed most of our media. Huge shift right now taking place in the kind of the digital revolution. And it means that a lot of our audience, obviously we were targeting 20 somethings. Obviously, a lot of our audience are on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on those different channels. So I think the most important thing is kind of go where your audience is going to be. So if you are targeting the demographic that I was, of course you have to be showing up on those platforms, because I think you have to show up where people are spending the most time, because we are not infinite people. We don't have all the time in the world. So I think you do have to have an element of prioritization. So there were years for us when Instagram was our focus. Then there was a year for us when we really focused on TikTok, and we had like crazy growth on there. And then in the final year that we were working on the business, we were really working on YouTube because we were working on our long form content. And so in those moments, we appreciated everything that was going on other platform, but we kind of laser focused in on one channel. And that doesn't mean that we didn't post on those because we made clips for everything, but we optimized for a certain channel. So clips were optimized for YouTube Shorts in the final year that we were doing the show, as opposed to the previous year they were optimized for TikTok. And don't get me wrong, that it's a lot of people will go, what's the difference? But it's like minuscule things that are better for each platform. But you don't want to have to necessarily go in and edit a video 3 times over. So we would still post it on the other platforms. And often things would go viral. The same video would go viral on loads of platforms. But we just said, look, our intention this year will be happy if we have our most growth on YouTube or we have our most growth on TikTok. So I think it's about being realistic with your plan and your strategy and say, actually, what would be the best place for us to grow? Because you can't do it all at once. Growth will still happen across the board, of course, but you have to kind of go, where would the most energy, where should I place the most energy, I think. And
Love
that's
that
how
advice. Yeah.
we worked on it.
I think that's key because I think it can be super overwhelming, especially when you can see. I played at the event I spoke about recently about Gary Vee just saying like you have to do 80 pieces of content every day, 7 days a week across all platforms. And we hear like influencers speak like that and people get so overwhelmed, they just end up doing nothing, right? Because it's not actually possible. So I think focusing on one platform is good. I also saw something recently about there was a thread and somebody was saying how they've paid social media managers and content creators to help them. And through working with different people, they've concluded that they feel like a lot of it is just trial and error and things change so quickly that, basically was saying, is there a formula? And I'm wondering for you, you talk about growth, you talk about viral clips. Have you figured out a general formula that that when you apply that, you can kind of guarantee that video is going to perform well?
I don't think you can ever guarantee a video is going to perform well. There's a lot of times where people think, you're editing a video and you're like, this is going to slap. No good. And you put it up and it's like crickets. Like, what? Like, seriously, that's a great video. Why can no one see that? And then there's sometimes you put up a video that took you 5 seconds to edit and it flies. My thing here is, as long as you are staying true to your core and you're not changing yourself, then it should be fine if you go viral for that moment. And it should be fine if someone also finds that video that you posted a few months back that only has 1,000 views, but still encompasses you. I don't think worrying about it too much, but my worry is when people try and chase the views and try and manipulate what they're doing for trends and stuff. You might then go viral for a trend that, it gets you loads of views, but is that actually helpful if you're building a business? Like, you don't want a 3-second video where you're just going, like a little, listeners can't hear me like do a little like shoulder shrug, but there's videos that go viral like that all the time with maybe a bit of text over the top. Is that bringing you any business? Is that bringing you any new listeners? Is that bringing you any new attention? Or is it just someone going, oh, I like and scroll? So I think the main thing is consistency in your niche and stay in your own lane. And there will be a moment, because there always will, where the virality will start to pick up and you'll start to get a few more consistent views, providing that you're doing simple things like having a good hook, you're driving conversation and it's edited very relatively well, it's well lit, like all of those kind of things that, are tick boxes and hopefully people will have heard before. But naturally, I would say that my biggest thing is to just stay in your own lane and make sure that every piece of content still comes back to why you're doing what you're doing and why you're in business. Otherwise, when that viral thing does happen, it's not going to be a benefit.
So there's a lot of people, like you're mentioning there, that they kind of have some viral clips and they get attention. There's also a lot of people that have podcasts, so they might have regular listenership. Even if it's not huge numbers, they have people listening week in, week out. Some of them don't have any idea how to actually monetize that and how to bring in income with that attention. Talk to us about that. What was your strategy and what's the things that you've done to actually monetize that audience and that attention?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that we did, and I think this is also like another kind of reason why we ended up, scaling back on what we were doing with Talk Twenties, is we had 100% of our income was from brand partnerships and sponsorships, pretty much. So we basically relied on brands who wanted to reach our target demographic of 20 somethings, largely slightly more female than it was male. And we basically worked with them on partnerships. So they'd come to us, they'd have a brief, they'd say, we want to get more young people to get involved in financial literacy, or we want more young people to understand, like we work with ONS, like we want more young people to understand what the census is, Randox Health, we want more young people to understand this test sort of thing. So they'd come to us with a brief. We would give them a price for collaborated content, whether that was ads on our podcast, host-read ads, whether it was, obviously we had big social channels as well, so whether that was collaborated posts on our social channels, we would create that content mentioning the brand in some way, and then it would go out on our platforms and they would pay a specific fee to do that. So that's typically how we worked. We always had upfront fees. There was honestly a handful of occasions where we worked on affiliates, but I would, that's a, if you don't necessarily need to rely on income for it, I think affiliates is a good route if it's your main gig. Like Talk Twenties was mine and a few other people's main gig. So we needed to know that we couldn't just be like, oh, let's, give all this advertising free for a brand awareness, free for a brand essentially. And, if they might give us a 1% of what comes back off of it. No, we've given them all that awareness anyway. So we very rarely did that unless it was like a perfect alignment. And even then, from what I can remember, like the ones that we did, they had a really great affiliate scheme. So we did end up getting paid really well from that. But essentially, that is how we monetized for the full 5 years. Same with the festival. Obviously, there was a income from ticket sales, but that wasn't actually the majority. It was mainly from brands wanting to sponsor the event. So we had Lush, we had another financial institution, we had different stands and stuff like that. So it was always brands who were wanting to reach that target audience, which is how we monetize. And we never, apart from people who came to 20s Fest, we never once charged our community to be involved or to feel a part of Talk Twenties. They were a listener just because they enjoyed it. So we never had a paid subscription model. Now, I do think a lot of that played into our decision to close in the end, but I also think it's just circumstance. I think the landscape has shifted somewhat in terms of the creator economy, and now it's quite saturated. When we first got one of our big sponsorship partnerships in the first couple of years, massive contract that we got there. I don't think we would have got it if we were to start those conversations right now. And that's because there's just too many options out there for brands at this moment in time. And also the landscape has changed financially, and the economic climate, especially in the UK, is a difficult one right now. 2-3 years ago, brands had a lot of brands had somewhat of some, maybe not disposable, but bigger marketing budgets for potentially the nice to haves. I agree, we're a nice to have because we're all about brand awareness. We can provide, that young audiences, we can give them information about your business. That's what we can essentially do. But it feels like when it's economically a little bit stressful for people and, companies are struggling to, we've got the hike in employment costs and stuff like that coming around at this moment in time. Brands are being so much tighter with their marketing budgets. And the first to going in climates like that are kind of the nice to haves, which obviously we were. So I think it's a tricky one because if I'd gone back, maybe I would have done some kind of paid membership or something to kind of charge our users or listeners or, whoever we were speaking to at the beginning, charge them. But I never had it in me. It never felt right to kind of do that because the whole reason why we started Talk Twenties were young people were struggling and feeling alone and didn't have loads of disposable income to do that. So it kind of went against the grain of our whole mission, which was why it was so difficult. And then naturally, it also, there are brands that do want to reach this demographic, but let's just say financial institutions like banks and stuff like that would much rather target a podcast that was for people in their 50s plus than it was in their 20s, because naturally they know that they're still building their income and not. So, the money that there was to play with in my sector, I feel like we did exceptionally well for 5 years. But yeah, that's probably like the most honest and most raw that I've ever spoken about how we monetized and why that worked and why that didn't across the 5 years. And don't get me wrong, we did really well, but it just in the end felt like it was like pushing a great big
Mhm.
thing up the hill, if you know what I mean.
So I'd love you to share a little bit about your process because from the conversations I've had with you, I feel like you're one of those people who's relatively strategic in how you approach anything. I feel like I'd love to just hear your process in terms of how you go about setting goals, how far ahead you tend to think, and then how do you build a strategy around that? Is there anything in that you could give us?
Yeah, sure. I caveat all of this by saying I have ADHD, so I do struggle with focus a lot of the time. I was late diagnosed, so I didn't even realize this was a problem I was struggling with until I was 28. So yeah, so I don't have a set routine every single day, and that works for me. I like to be able to have flexibility in my schedule, but I'm very clear and intentional about my goals. And because they're so clear cut in my head, it makes it very easy to take action every single day against those goals. And it really helps me to say them out loud and to vocalize them to friends, to family, put them on social media and stuff like that, because it essentially holds me accountable. Because otherwise, I will lose my focus or I will go, oh, actually, I don't know if I can do that. So I kind of use speaking to family, friends, and my social media as a kind of a way to go, no, I said I'm going to do this. I'm going to have to do it now. And I would say that since obviously starting in business, I have begun, I don't know if it's just growing older or if it's just becoming better in business or if it's just managing my diary more effectively, but I have really clear organization in place so that it just works with how my brain works. So there's some flexibility there, but there's also some things that are clear cut that I have to, like every single thing that I'm doing that is a timed occasion goes straight in my calendar. It's not written down on a piece of paper or whatever. If Matt said to me, Gabs, do you want to come to my birthday party on the weekend? Straight away, I'm putting that in my calendar because otherwise I would just simply will forget. Then when it comes to tasks and how I'm breaking down kind of big projects and stuff like that, I use Notion. Notion's my Bible. I literally use it for everything. I work across a lot of different projects now. Some linked to Talk Twenties, well, all of it's linked to Talk Twenties in a way. It's all about business and media. Um, and I have to obviously manage lots of different tasks. So I use Notion to basically build different tasks into different things, and then that all feeds into an overall task list that I can just kind of chip away at in the times in between all the things that like essentially timed or booked out to do at a certain time. Um, and I'm actually working one of those projects, and this is a bit of an exclusive because not spoken about it on any other podcast, but one of the projects that I'm working on at this moment in time is an AI productivity tool. And essentially it tracks everything that you're doing on your laptop and allows you, it's like a fitness tracker for your focus. And essentially it allows you to work through your tasks in the most effective way. It understands where your time is going each day. So are you spending so much time on emails? Are you spending so much time on Canva or on editing or whatever it is? And it provides a report and insights on that and has an AI coach involved, and they can use that information to help coach you be as productive as possible. So that is something that I'm working on. I've got three other co-founders that I'm building that with at this moment in time, due to launch in honestly a couple of weeks. We haven't gone public with it yet. But that is essentially building in the background and it kind of fits in with the rest of the way that I work. So yeah, I don't know if this is boring for you, Matt, but that is how I manage my time.
I love it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people resonating. I know that I certainly resonate with that about, having clear things in the diary and making sure they get in there straight away is a big one for me. Otherwise, it just won't end up in there. But also not being too rigid in a daily structure. I think I've tried to be like that because I've had mentors tell me that's how I'm supposed to be. And
Mm.
actually, through trial and error and self awareness, learn that's not how I function at the best and that's not optimal for me. So I really do resonate with that. And it's kind of that thing of, a lot of coaches in the online space, they try and give these I don't know, one size fits all approach in every client that they work with. And it's all this, you need this morning routine and you need to, get your steps in first, whatever. And I know that I was around that for a long time. And then I found actually that's not the best way that I work. So I love that. And some mornings it is, like some mornings that does serve me, but it's
Yeah.
about recognizing that for me, I don't work well when I've got this set every day looks the same. I do time blocking, which really helps me, but it's
Yeah.
not that every day is exactly the same. Something else, and by the way, there's so much I want to talk about. I'm just like, oh my god, the AI productivity tool. Everyone's like, tell us more about that. So we definitely need like clarity on how we can find more about that. But one thing that I know people struggle with when they've been building a brand slash business, or maybe some people have had it as a side hustle alongside a full-time job and things like that, and then they're making that transition into being really serious about business. And we hear all the time, delegation, outsource, build a team, this is how you're going to scale, this is how you're going to grow. And I know for so many people, putting it bluntly, they're shit scared, the idea of employing people and things like that. And I know that you built a team around you with Talk 20s. Can you just share in terms of having the confidence to do that, or knowing when to invest, or how to employ people, or pick who should I employ? What was that process like for you?
Yeah. I often describe, and ever since I started Talk 20s, I've described Talk 20s as my baby business, like the business that I would learn how to be a good business owner with. I always knew it wouldn't last forever. But I think I used the last 5 years to basically do like I guess an MBA in how to kind of run a business, because I touched on all areas. I touched on fundraising, I touched on on sales, marketing, you name it, across the board. But the one that I'm really pleased that I got to experience is kind of HR and hiring and recruitment and managing a team and culture and stuff, because that's huge for a business. So that's how I kind of look on the last 5 years. And I have to say I had a really lovely experience of having a team. I am so appreciative of the people that have been a part of Talk 20s over the past 5 years. They've all played a huge part in it. Specifically, one individual was with me for 2.5 years of that journey. So much so, she had such a huge impact that I basically gave her co-founder title, because she had such a large impact on the organization. But there were other people along the way who also had a big impact, who were there for a short time, not a long time, as the saying goes. I'm also really grateful too. We had Liv, who grew 20s fast when we worked on that project. We couldn't have done it without her. We had Joe, who kind of worked on some of the strategy for the YouTube side of things. Couldn't have done it without him. And I think it's just about appreciating the team that come on board, because essentially they're also taking a risk on you and your idea at the same time as you're taking a risk on them and bringing them on board. So I think it's kind of like a mutual respect. And it's difficult because managing people, you're also responsible for, paying their mortgage or their rent or whatever. And that's a lot to take on. And I'm not going to say that's easy. I definitely feel less stressed in the past 2 months, where I have no employees and the only person I've got to worry about is me. Like that, definitely, there's a huge like stress reliever there. But at the same time, I think you have to, in order to be able to grow, you have to, and you have to employ a team. You have to kind of take on that challenge. And I just saw it honestly as a learning opportunity, and I tried to just vow to do the best that I could. I had a really good HR consultant who I just paid on an hourly rate, and I kept going to her. I was like, I've got this challenge, and I don't know how to address this. How would you sort this with a contract, or how would you sort this with that? And she was just amazing at kind of giving me that advice and talking me through and going, well, this is how you'd bring this person in, etc. So I think look at it as, if you've never hired anyone before, be candid with your team and say, look, this is my first time hiring someone. I'm learning at the same pace. I'm learning how to employ just as much as you're learning how to work in this company. And find the people who are kind of willing to take who are invested in what you're doing too, because ultimately they have to love it, otherwise.
I think that's a really important one, actually. Like, if you are going from a one woman, one man band of this is just your passion project, like it was for you and like Success School has been for me, then when you start bringing people on, I think they need, they're never necessarily going to be as invested the same as you, but there
Mm.
has to be an understanding of what you're trying to build
Yeah.
and a willingness to not just be like, well, I'm working these contracted hours, and if I clock off at this time, it almost has to be, to some degree, I guess, a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset versus an employee mindset, because like you say, you're taking a bet on them, they're taking on you. It's very much a collaborative
I
team
think in a
effort.
small business, absolutely. And I think, especially for young people, for example, I know that the experiences that I've, given the team that I've had, they've also been really young as well. I would hope that if they wanted to start their own business now, they will have had they basically have first-hand training from watching me go through it and just being like one removed from being a founder. And I would hope that there's so much more experience for, Olivia in particular, I remember was so entrepreneurial. She had so many different ideas. And I would hope that her experience of being so close to on the ground for 20s Fest, she could use all of that experience and then take it on to start her own business. So I do think that an entrepreneurial mindset in those early days is really important for your founding team members, but I can't give advice on going from that to scaling up to a bigger team because I just never got to that point. And maybe I will with future businesses, and that will be a new challenge. But yeah, I had, at most we were three or four. So yeah.
Okay, you said maybe I will. I think we've teased it enough. I'm sure people are like, what the bloody hell is she doing now?
Lots of
Tell us,
things.
Gabby, what's been the transition? You spoke there about, you did really well with Talk Twenties. Equally, you said there was challenges with that, with the climate, with the target audience, and so on. So just tell us, what was the reason for the change, and what is the change, and what's the goal now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think naturally, I'm 29, I'm turning 30 in just 2 months' time, and I really loved working on this project, but I keep saying it was a project that got out of hand. Like it was, I wanted to do like a little, event in June 2020, and the event I was looking at, the size of the room was like it probably could have had like 30 people in. Like it was tiny what I had in mind. And like I said, that compounding of courage just happened. And 5 years down the line, I'm like, whoa, like where did that even go? It wasn't necessarily my intention. And everyone was always going to say, you can do talk 30s, you can do talk 30s, you can do talk 30s. And I was like, I just knew from the get-go I was never going to do talk 30s, like even when people said it right in the beginning. So I honestly didn't know what I was going to do next. And I think that 20s Fest were in October 2023 was probably where I struck. I didn't struggle after that point. It wasn't really. Struggle's not the right word. I think after that point, I felt like I had achieved far more than what I wanted to because that was my original plan was to launch that event. So it was kind of like checkbox done, and it was so exhausting to launch that festival. I know we did it in like 90 days, 3 months, and I was really proud of it. But at the end of it, I was like, I don't think I've got it in me to go again and do another festival the next year round. It made only a small amount of money. It was a great event and people found it really really helpful, but financially it wasn't a great big. It didn't like plow tons of finances into the business. So I knew I didn't want to do it again. So after that, probably it was a year and 3 months after 20s Fest that we ended up making that decision. And I think with me, if I look back now, I probably should have closed down the business sooner had I have known, because I knew that kind of I didn't know where the next level was going to go. I knew I didn't want to charge our audience. I knew that brand opportunities were few and far between because of the economic climate. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this every single day as my only job because it's very repetitive. I was doing the same podcast, having the same, I've got the same standard question, not the same questions for every single guest. We have a different section at the beginning and then we had standard questions. I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this, like even throughout my 30s. I just didn't really know where it was going. And I always look back and I think, I think I would have, looking back now, I would have said, I think I would have closed and wrapped things up sooner. But we had sponsors contracts ongoing for the whole of that time that we had to see through. And I was still enjoying myself. I was having a great time. I was still getting paid, they paid, good income and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, myself and Georgia, who I call my co-founder, we felt like we had kind of reached the plateau of it, and it needed to change and evolve because what we'd done with Talk Twenties had kind of reached the peak of what we could, and we couldn't see a way that it would. We tried every different avenue and it wasn't working. So or showing enough traction. So I think it was the hardest thing to be like, I think I'm going to make the decision to close down now. Now I know it's the right decision. But I think because it was my first business, you kind of have to push it to the end. I think people also say that in breakups, like your first breakup is like the worst breakup in relationships because you're like, oh no, this is my, my first love and all of that kind of stuff. But then sometimes, I mean, not every breakup is easy, but like, the next time you might be a bit like more clinical and go, oh, okay, I should have broken it off here because the warning signs were there, sort of thing. But yeah, like I don't ever look on it as if it was a bad time at all. I just that was the reality of it and how we came to the decision earlier this year.
So what's the plan now? Let us know.
I'm working on so many different projects, which I absolutely love. So one of the projects I've already mentioned. So yeah, it's an AI productivity tool. It's called Passata, like the squash tomato, and comes obviously from like the Pomodoro timer. You can search it up on the internet now, passata.io. And essentially, I am launching a business with my husband and our two friends, Olivia and Richie, who are also engaged to be married. So it's two couples. Richie is a software developer, hugely talented, incredible at building software. So he's currently building the whole platform right now. Olivia is the founder of Girls in Marketing. So she's an absolute marketing guru, Forbes 30 under 30. She's absolutely incredible. I'm leading on the operations of the whole business and also the creative side and all media. And then my husband, Dan, has a sales background and is in finance. So he's managing all the sales and finance. So we've got quite the team that we're starting with. And yeah, we're just all of it for all of us. This is classed as a side hustle. It's not something we're spending full time of our week on. This is probably about half a day to a day's worth of work per week, maybe a little bit more because we're in launch period at this moment in time. But essentially, all of us are very entrepreneurial. It's a project that we're passionate about. We can do in evenings and weekends if that suits our current timetable. But yeah, that is one of the projects that I'm working on at this moment in time that I'm super excited about. So yeah.
And I'm so invested in if you're going to be the next Lorraine Kelly. Now, for those who haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, do you want to just tell us what that goal is?
Yeah. So I've obviously I mentioned I love Talk Twenties, and I think a byproduct that I wasn't really expecting because I had the original idea was to do the festival. I wasn't expecting to just fall in love with interviewing people and having chats about their life and essentially it's journalism really, but I wasn't expecting to enjoy hosting, presenting, all of that kind of stuff as much as I did. I have grown up on the stage. I've done a lot of performing when I was younger. So naturally I've always loved the world of entertainment, the world of media, but for some reason just never, I don't know. Of course, I thought it was a career option because I ended up doing it with Talk Twenties, but I don't know why I never thought that I could be on TV or could do this. And essentially, I have been doing that for the past 5 years. So when this all ended, I was like, well, if there was a person whose career out there that I would really want, who would it be? And you're looking at Lorraine Kelly, Oprah, all of those kind of people. They're really entrepreneurial women as well. They've got some great businesses going on, but they are, it's all about human connection and those human conversations. And so for me, I just feel so passionately about being able to do that. And also obviously having all these business ventures that I'm working on the side. So I put it out there, I put it on the internet. I was like, whose job I would love to have is Lorraine Kelly. And it's so funny because so many people have sent me like videos of her. Someone texted me the other day saying, Lorraine Kelly's on Radio 4. Someone else sent me that she was signing books in my area. Like on Saturday, she was like probably from my house right now. She was about 3-4 miles away, and I was in New York, so that was excellent. So I couldn't even meet her then.
What's the plan? To kidnap her? Are your friends trying to?
I don't know. I don't know what I would do if I got in the same room. I'd just be like, hi, I'm that creepy person that keeps talking about you on the internet.
It wants your job.
Yeah, and I want your job. Like, I don't really know how that conversation is going to go down. I think I am going to message her and say, like, would she mentor me? In fact, Lorraine Kelly, if you're listening to this, would you mentor me?
I've heard she listens every week, so
Yeah,
you're fine now.
exactly. But yeah, I love the media world. I love the world of media, entertainment, and those kind of conversations are what really light me up. So I'm trying to kind of just manage the two, the creative and the media side and the entrepreneurial side as well. And we'll see where I end up.
I really love your willingness to just state goals out into the world and just have a clear vision and go, that's the kind of thing I want, and then confidently put it out there and not just write it down or speak about it behind closed doors. You know, I know you spoke about how that helps you be accountable is actually stick it on social media. But I love that. And I love the willingness to be daring, to be bold, to be brave with that vision. And I just think it's great. And I think what an inspiration for other people, not just in their 20s now, but of all ages, to hear from somebody like you. You spoke about there about, your husband, and congratulations. I know you got married in the last year as well. So I just love if you can just touch upon just a little bit about that dynamic, of building businesses, of being entrepreneurial. And also, I know you speak a lot about, business being fun and still having a social life and, being in a relationship and being married. Have you got anything there that is important to you in terms of how to manage that? Because we always hear this story or this narrative, should I say, about work-life balance and it doesn't exist and things like that. What's kind of your take on it?
Yeah. So first of all, I think I'm so blessed with the individual that I actually met 11 years ago. We met at university, and we've basically grown up together, which I think helps. And he is essentially a male version of me in lots of different ways. And he's doing amazing in his career. He's just actually kind of career changed from sales into finance in the past few years. Initially, I would say that in terms of a relationship, and I talked about this on TikTok once and it went crazy viral, but I talked a lot about being the anchor. And I don't know if you guys are in relationships where this can be the case, but often the way that Dan and I have kind of looked at it is we look at who's being the anchor at one moment in time so that the other person can progress or make a career change. Now, I've career changed from teaching to events to being an entrepreneur to, I guess I'm now classed as a freelance consultant now. So I've had 4 career changes since I graduated from university at 21 and I'm 29 now. And Dan has equally changed jobs and had 1 career change in that time as well, from sales to finance. So at those moments in time, like, I think I went viral for it because I said, we take it in turns to quit our jobs. And I didn't mean it like so literally, and that's probably why I did really well. But that's essentially what we do. One of us goes, okay, I got this, and, then we call it being the anchor. I've got this down, whilst the other one can kind of have a bit of change going on. And then I get comfortable in that position and I've got like the steady income coming in. And then he makes that change and he changes that way. And we kind of just have worked in a team that way, which, I think is so important. But communication is really key when you're going through that. The other way that we work now, because we're both in incredibly entrepreneurial situations where we're building businesses and, he's obviously building a client base and stuff like that. It helps for us, and we've realized this only recently, to work in stints. So essentially there might be a 6 or 8 week period where the focus is mainly work. Of course, we still do fun things on the weekends and go on date nights and all that kind of stuff. But essentially most of our working week is very work heavy. And then at the end of those 8 weeks, we'll book a little weekend away, or if, got the budget, we book a really nice trip away. And in that time, there is no talk of work because we didn't connect because of work. Like, that's not the reason why I met at university. Neither of us were in work. So we've just been in New York last week. We probably talked about work 5% of the time, and 95 of it was about food or sightseeing or all the other reasons, things that we want to chat about, or Love is Blind because we're watching that at the minute. It's very good. And it's just important that I think that you have that kind of balance. And for us, entrepreneurialism, ideas come at all different times of the day. And we also want to bounce us another thing that we do is we also want to bounce ideas off one another. So we do genuinely talk a lot about work. And sometimes I go, God, I only feel like feel like I've been your business advisor today and your business consultant and your wife. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Another thing that we do, just to keep going into what we chat about, but we also do this thing where we call it a daily download, just to like offload our day. A lot can happen in a day, especially when you're going to meetings, big, small. So essentially, we will probably have like 5 minutes when we first get home from work where we just word vomit at each other. This is what happened with my day. This was the outcome of this meeting. I think I'm doing this. I think I'm doing that. I'm doing this. And then he will do the same back at me. And you try and consume as much of that information as possible so you at least know where your significant other is at in the day. And so I know a lot of like what he's going on, and we also really communicate about this is what my week looks like. I'm going to be in this office on this day. I'm going to be here on that day. We need the dog looking after on that day. So a lot of it is communication. But yeah, that's what I would say. Working instance, daily downloads, and yeah, just great communication.
Love it. All right, we're going to go into the general live questions now that I ask all guests. So the first one is, what's some of the best advice you've received and why?
Oh, such a good question. But I find it so hard in these moments and times to pluck a singular thing out of my brain. It's like everything goes cold. I don't know if that's the ADHD, but it just like no.
Just so you know, that's exactly what happens to me when I'm in this situation. In fact, it happened to me when I was on your show, so I get it.
Yeah.
We've got time. We can
So
edit.
hard. I'm like, gosh, and now I've got to think about every single thing that someone has ever said to me in their life, validate it into a list, pick the best.
Gabby, you don't. Honestly, it's not that deep. I don't mean the actual. I don't mean the best. Just like
My
a good
heart is
one.
like I'm getting palpitations over here. I a quote that I live by. This won't sound inspirational. I'll get off this call and I'll think of something so bloody inspirational, and it'd be so annoying that I didn't say it. Actually, no, I've got a good one. I've got a good one. I've got a good one. You don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great.
And that is a good one. I love
It
that.
is a good one, and you have to really think about it. But I do think that comes into the whole compounding thing. Like you don't have to be a great. I wasn't a great podcast host in the beginning. I had no hopes of being the next Lorraine Kelly when I first started out. But people actually were like, now that I've posted it 5 years on after I've been doing this for 5 years, no one actually laughed at me. Everyone put in the comments like, we so can see that you can do that. But if I'd have put it at the beginning, that wouldn't have made sense. So yeah, you don't have to be
Okay.
great to start. You have to start to be great.
Love it. Next one is the flip side. What's some of the worst advice? Something that might have been good intentioned, well meaning, but actually through life experience, you've gone, that's not great.
Um, I definitely can think of one here. I think the idea, I took a lot of advice in the early days from, I don't know why, from middle-aged old men that had been in business for a really long time and didn't have the same beliefs, values, thoughts about business as I had. And I won't go into this too much, but I nearly gave away 70% of my business for £0 as a result of doing that in the very early days. So found myself kind of, I guess, taking on too much advice and thinking that other people knew more than I did. Don't let anyone think that you know your business more than that they know their business more than you. You are the best person to do your business. Don't let anyone convince you that you are somehow inexperienced to do this. You know what you're trying to build. And I think it's just about having that belief in yourself, because that can, if I didn't turn around and eventually go, no, I think I'm actually going to back myself and thank you very much for your time, but I don't think it's actually that helpful, then I wouldn't be sat here today. The business wouldn't have existed after a few months, I think. But yeah, I do think that, yeah, you don't necessarily need to listen to every single person's advice on your business. Take from it what is helpful for you, but you know your business best, I'd say.
Love that. Totally agree. There's a question that you asked me when I came on your show that I'd love to fire back at you, because I think it's a really powerful question. And you spoke about, the concept that often when people listen to podcasts like this, They can put the person being interviewed on a pedestal as almost like, they've arrived, they're now perfect, and that we can learn loads from them. And obviously, it's really important that we remind people that we're all just human and we constantly have challenges. I always say there's progress, not perfection. And you asked me, what is one thing I still right now am struggling with? What's a challenge right now in my life? And, how am I dealing with it? How am I working through that? So I'd like to put that back to you tonight. What is something that right now you're still struggling with, and how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, for me, naturally, it's focus. Um, I think I'm focused in many, many ways. But actually, if you zoom out, there's so many projects I'm working on right now, Passata being one. I've got loads of other ideas in the pipeline. I want to do more of my personal brand content. I've got a few consultancy clients. And actually, I think I really sometimes struggle with just niching down and putting my all into one thing because, I saw an analogy once of someone kicking, they had five footballs in a row and you only have a certain amount of energy that you can kick those footballs. And so you can either kick one football 5 times and it can get over there, or you can kick 5 footballs and they can all get to about there. And I think I'm not kicking 5 footballs. I think I'm kicking 1,000 footballs at a time. And so for me, it is all about focus. And I really, really struggle to say, that sounds like a great opportunity, but it's not for me because I think, oh, but I could do this or I could have this and I could do that. And I'm one person. I don't have all these hours in the day. And right now, some days I think I'm juggling it great and it's all fine because you're juggling things like, this one brings in this much income. This one brings in potential opportunity for a sale later down the line. This one might bring in media opportunities. This one might bring in opportunity to meet Lorraine Kelly. Like you're juggling all those things at different times. I'm always going to tell myself that, there's a reason to do all these different things, but I really struggle to go this, with my time and going, where do I put my energy? Which football should I be kicking? And which ones should I just let stay there? So
I often think it's about recognizing what's the one that's going to move the needle the furthest, that's going to be like the foundational win, that if you get that in place, you can then leverage that result. So that's why I have a bit of a motto people are, probably sick of hearing me say, which is do less, better. And that's kind of aligned with what you're saying there is just pick that one thing that if you can do it outstanding and have a huge win, then it's that thing of you can have everything you want in this life, just not at the same time. And what you said, what you said there about, saying, no, this is not for me. What helps me is going, no, it's not for me right now. It might be in the future, but not in this season, because this is my goal. This is the foundational win that if I can be outstanding at this one thing, then we can look at the other things later if those opportunities are still there. And if they're not, I'm sure there'll be others anyway. And I think that is something I really struggled with when I was younger, and I struggle with it way less now because through that learning through doing, ultimately, you realize that, as you say, thousands of footballs getting kicked just doesn't work, right? And over time, sometimes you have to learn through getting it wrong as well, which is actually, I'm really sick of kicking footballs now. So now I'm going to finally just kick this one and stop with the others. And I think it takes time.
I'm definitely kicking a few footballs this moment in time. I think I've got to find my one because I kicked one football for 5 years.
Right.
So I'm just like, I'm having my, dabbling season where I'm
and that's a good point, actually. Yeah, I like that. Sometimes it's good.
A bit of dribbling.
Yeah. It's good. I like that. I think that's a good nuanced point as well. Yeah. All right, the 3 lessons question. So this is about, obviously this show is about helping people live happier, healthier, more fulfilled lives. So if you was to leave the listeners today with 3 life lessons or kind of 3 truths, 3 things to live by, that if they follow these 3 things, it's going to mean that they're on the right path to living a happy, a healthy, and a fulfilling life. What would be three things you could give us?
Okay, my first one is going to be something that I started at the beginning of this year and has changed my whole life. Not a joke. I started practicing gratitude. I honestly thought this was like, woo-woo and, all these different things. But I started, again, I did it publicly. And I haven't done it since New York. But I started posting on my Instagram every single day, three things I was grateful for that day. It could have been a
Yeah,
really
I've
nice
seen
meeting.
that. I actually saw that. You put it on your story, didn't you, a few
My
times?
story. I put on my story every day for all of January and all of February, and it's only March where I haven't got back into it again. But I haven't posted much. I didn't. I was very, like I said, I was very present in New York. Didn't think about work. My personal brand to me feels like work, so haven't posted for the past couple of weeks. But I'm going to pick up again, and I'm going to tag you and say I'm grateful for this conversation today. But I started doing that, writing three things I was grateful for at the beginning of the year, and it's changed my whole outlook. Obviously, I've had a great big change since the beginning of the year as well, with Talk Twenties ending. But it's allowed me to just feel so much more grateful for just the smaller things. Um, I feel I've lived in the same house for 5 years, but I've never felt, and not much has changed in the time since I started doing this grateful, but I love my home. There's such a weird thing. Something's happened where I'm just like, I'm so grateful that this is my house and this is where I live and this is my partner and this is my dog and these are my family and these are my friends. And it's a massive like head shift that has changed. So I would say to anyone, give the grateful thing a go. At first, you'll be like, "Oh my God, I can't even think past like 2 days," because then you start going, "I'm happy for fish and chips I had tonight, happy for this candle," and like, but that's good. Like, it should be nice. And I kind of did it in my head when I was in New York, so I was lapping it up. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful I got to see this. I'm so grateful I got to do this. And I was just doing it like in my head. And on the way home, unfortunately, this wasn't the case with my husband, but I actually got upgraded to first class. And I was like, I was so, so, so pleased because when we got on the plane to New York, I said to my husband, manifesting turning left one day. I literally said those words.
Wow.
Next flight that I got on home, I got an upgrade. He got upgraded to premium economy, which was basically just extra leg space. And I'm sad that I didn't get to experience it with him, but I'm grateful I did get to experience it at the same time. I got a great night's sleep. And some really nice food on like actual China plates as well. Look at me. Anyway. So I just think like, oh, those moments are just great. And I think you just have to be grateful. So those are my three things, because I always say three things I'm grateful for. So I won't ramble on. Those are my three things I think you should do. Write down three things that you're grateful for every day.
I love that. And I completely get it. Like, I know sometimes I think I sound like a right weirdo and I
Yeah.
don't care. Like, I actually don't care because being in a state of genuine gratitude and appreciation for small things just completely enhances every area of your life when you're doing it regular.
Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Gabby, this has been amazing. I'm such a supporter and a fan of everything that you do, and I'm really
Likewise.
appreciative of your time, coming and speaking with us today. So if people are discovering you for the first time and they want to go and follow your journey, what's the best places they can find you and what's the handles and things like that?
Yeah. So my handles are I am Gaby Mendes. My name is spelled with one B, Gaby, and Mendes with an S, Mendes. And yeah, please do come follow my journey. I'll be posting about, wanting to be the next Lorraine Kelly and everything that I'm working on. I try and do it in a storytelling and kind of Bridget Jones inspired kind of way. So I kind of do voiceovers where you can understand what's going on in my head, even though you see visually what my day was like. And that's how I like to like communicate and post my content on my kind of personal channels. And yeah, please come follow me, come say hi. And I appreciate everyone that's still listening to this conversation.
Amazing. All right, we're going to do a quick Q&A with the members now. But before we head into that, final question from me is, Gabby, what is your definition of success?
Oh, um, I think my definition of success is being truly happy with where you're at in life, no matter how your income is, or it's not necessarily financial for me. I think it's like a fulfillment thing that can happen on an average salary, if that's what you want in life. Success to me is genuinely waking up and feeling fulfilled and happy. in every aspect, I guess, of your life. And I also think it ebbs and flows. So I think some days you'll wake up and you'll feel that, and some days you won't, and that's okay. So as long as you're feeling it, I don't know, 70% of the time, I think you're onto a winner.
Love that. Gabby, thank you so much.